Hey everyone, Stephen Green here, and of course I'm here with the famous, if not infamous, Sam Vakili. Sam, give us a wave, buddy. There
Hey,
we
everybody.
go. We are coming to you from our beautiful home offices now. We'll call it the Mortgage and Market Studios, as they're now known. So, Sam, how are things going for you this week, bud? Are you getting more kind of clients calling you? Are like, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'd say this week's been a little bit busier than I've maybe expected. I think we had a bit of a lull there for a couple weeks. Consumer sentiment, I think, is beginning to change, especially maybe it's the weather, maybe it's the news. I think the conversations are starting back up where people want to know what's going on. They want to be in the know. So you're starting to see the shift slowly but surely.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. I mean, listen, I don't think you can keep people in their houses forever. I think, and we're going to talk about Trump in a second, but I think people are just, have they had enough of it? And we're human beings. Scientifically, we can't be doing this, right? We want to be
Hmm.
out the whole bit and nicer weather, even though here in Ontario it's freezing cold right now. But I
Right.
think that's what I'm seeing too. People are asking questions and they're dealing with virtual tours and all that other stuff. So yeah, I'm seeing the
Yeah.
same thing. A lot of questions though, eh? Like you're giving a lot of advice.
Yeah, a lot of questions, just trying to understand what's going on, trying to position themselves in the right way. There's a little bit more planning conversation, which is probably going back to the norm, which is good. So it's getting there.
Now, people I'm guessing are probably starting to get a little bit more anxious to get out because now we're hearing stuff like, right or wrong, Trumpy boy there is letting people out of their houses and yeah, go to the beach or, he's
Yeah.
left it to the governors to get out there. And so Florida beaches are full. And I think Arizona's got it. And you also said Saskatchewan opened up their plan too, right?
Or they're discussing it. I think I saw in the Globe yesterday that they've started to outline their 5-point plan, and they've
Well,
they've
it's
talked about.
important though, because Saskatchewan's got those big beaches, right? So like
Yeah, yeah,
Florida,
yeah,
so I
yeah,
understand. So yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
Can't wait, can't wait. We're gonna go visit them, I guess.
That's
So
great.
it sounds like Saskatchewan's one of the lesser hit provinces from a health side of things. So they probably feel as though, same as parts of Eastern Canada, they can open up a little bit earlier than say Ontario and Quebec. And it's a good thing to keep an eye on because a lot of these areas that are opening up before we do, we're gonna have to take points from their playbook. Right. So, they're talking about hopefully starting in early May and then phasing it in kind of 2 week increments. And they have, like I said, they said there's 5 plans or point plan, three of which have been outlined. It's things like, chiropractors and doctors being open back up. I think they put hairdressers on there. I think
We
they even,
need the hairdressers back, dude. All I'm
it's true.
saying
It's
is we
true.
need the hairdressers back,
I
okay?
know. I
My
know.
headphones are keeping my hair like from not hurting somebody. So
There you go. There you go. That, yeah. They're even talking about gyms in phase 3, which I think was the one that I was most surprised by. So it
not as
sounds like
urgent.
no, no, no. So it's getting in that direction, and most likely we will fall, will lag a little bit behind them. Certain parts of the world are going to be affected more severely. So it'll be interesting as that optimism comes out. I think people are chomping at the bit.
Isn't that weird though that okay, so I don't know if you see this as well and my wife loves CNN for only
Hmm.
the entertainment value, okay?
Okay. Okay.
And it's weird that we were just criticizing the US for Florida and all the other stuff going on, but now all of a sudden I don't know about you, but I'm looking down there to see okay, what are they doing? Like is it
Hmm.
getting better? Is it going to increase? Is it going to get worse? So yeah, hey, if there's any province to be a guinea pig for us, let's make it Saskatchewan, man.
Yeah, there you go. And it's funny, you're seeing things around the world also. Other parts in Europe are talking about it, also Asia. So we're all going to be watching very, very closely to see how does it work, what works, what doesn't work. I think it's funny. I read an article yesterday on, or 2 days ago, Bill Gates was saying what needs to be done in order to really open things back up. And his message is really around testing, vaccination, treatment, all the stuff that you would expect, and that's what we need to get to. But until we get there, hopefully we can go back to some form of normalcy.
There's going to be some pharmaceutical companies or some group is going to be making a lot of money off of this in a good way in the sense that get the testing, figure it out, and go from there. Because I mean, I can't imagine. And listen, I'm going off a different direction here, but I can't imagine every time we have an outbreak of a virus, a flu, cold season, like we can't shut down like this all the time. I don't. I maybe I'm crazy, but I don't think we need to shut down the world every time we have a health crisis. but now this is good training for going forward,
Yeah,
right?
hopefully we kind of figure it out this go around and we don't make the same mistake next time.
Absolutely.
Fingers
So,
crossed.
yeah, absolutely. So housing market. So I had some stuff to say on this, and I know you got some stuff too. So, what we're seeing from the banks, I think we're seeing a lot, with a few exceptions, we're seeing a lot of common sense being used with a lot of customers. I think the housing market still has to move, and it is still moving. I've got clients meeting me virtually, of course, to do their pre-approval stuff like that, and I mean, the banks are still willing to do stuff. There's still a ton of essential workers where it is business as usual. So, my message to people on the mortgage side is banks are using common sense. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It might be bad if you've got an income disruption, but
Hmm.
if you are still working, listen, we're open for business. I heard something that banks are not open for business. Absolutely we are, but we don't want to put someone in a bad situation if they legitimately aren't working right now. And I think I started this call with, or this show with advice. Are you giving out a lot of advice? That's what I'm running into, right? So what are you hearing on the housing market?
I'm kind of curious to see. Well, I was hoping you were going to give me some tidbits as well. I think what I have noticed is, so Goldman Sachs has some data that they try and aggregate around the different industries that are being affected, and this is not just housing. It's travel, it's discretionary spending, retailers, restaurants, etc. And so, like I said, we're going to be looking at other parts of the world that are opening up before us to see how things are bouncing back. And it actually looks like housing is one of the sectors or industries that is bouncing the best, probably because at the end of the day we all need a house. It's an investment, it's something we hold dear, it's an emotional connection. There's a lot of things going on there, but it looks like certain industries are struggling to bounce back, restaurants being an example, whereas the housing market is maybe bouncing back faster than anticipated, I suppose would be the word.
Yeah, and we still have historically low rates. I mean, listen, you can still, just like pre-COVID time, you can still get a mortgage for, less than 3.1% ish, depending on what term you go with. They call it the key interest rates, right? But that is historically low. So yeah, everyone is still in the market. Everyone can
Yeah,
still buy a house. So that industry, it's gonna roll. And I think you've got so many investors, and I got investors looking for properties right now. They're looking for deals, and that's what they're finding. So that
that's
doesn't
exactly
surprise
it.
me at all, right?
Yeah, I should mention I was talking about China. It looks like they're looking at the information out of the US to see if it's going to play the same way.
Yeah.
But I think today I looked at the Globe this morning, and Trudeau's talking about rent relief now for small and medium sized companies.
Yeah.
That's
Hot
huge.
off the press, right?
That's huge,
Yeah.
right? If that happens, it puts a lot of or takes a lot of pressure off of these companies, these small businesses, these media, whatever you want to call them, because they're going to be having a hard time from a cash flow perspective. So that helps the real estate market, I assume.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it does, but I also think that here's what I'm worried about, and you tell me if I'm off my rocker or not. So I'm just looking at my screen right now. So Canadian military helping out long term. Feds unveiling rent relief for businesses. The CBRE $2,000 a month benefit or whatever.
Mhm.
Our government's spending a lot of money that I'm pretty sure they don't have. Are we gonna be
So,
paying for this for
sort of.
decades to come?
So it's not so much that they don't have it, because you're seeing a lot of central banks and a lot of governments stepping in with both fiscal and monetary policy to try and ease the burden, right? That's the
Mm,
kind of the idea. We were talking about it last week, quantitative easing, all this kind of stuff. The power that they have is that they can print money. The question will be is, does it dilute the value of the dollar? Does it
yeah,
have, what are the long-term impacts of this? Because really this is a short-term play to try and keep things from going into a liquidity crisis and pushing a domino that is hard to bounce back from, because that's really what happened in 0809, right?
yeah.
The housing market really took such a huge blow that it trickled into the banking sector, Wall Street, et cetera, and then it trickled over into Main Street from there. So that's where I think all of these moves are to stop or minimize us going down that road again. Now, Will there be implications from that? Most likely. Usually there's a cause and effect. That's the way that the world works. I think I saw something yesterday saying that if you're going to allow a government, or excuse me, if you're going to expect a government to step in when things are going poorly to help citizens and companies, then when things are going well, you're going to have to accept higher taxation. You can't have it both ways,
Yeah.
right? Capitalism, socialism, whatever kind of philosophy you want to talk about, it seems like we're blending more and more, right? If you had
Yeah.
this conversation 10, 20 years ago, I don't know how many people would buy into this kind of socialist, for lack of a better term, mindset. So we seem to be shifting more to the left,
Yeah.
which means I wouldn't be surprised if on the, at least on the US side, we see some increases in taxation.
So on that note, I'm getting a little bit frustrated, Sam, because my drive to Zares and back is getting more expensive. Gas is over 80 cents. Okay. What's
Yeah.
going on? You said something happened this week. It's frustrating me, man. What's going on here? Because I don't know about the gas
Yeah.
thing.
So oil futures on Monday, Tuesday, they dropped to historic lows. And I don't want to get into the weeds as far as why, because it's really just, it's not information that's necessarily going to be that relevant but or interesting. But you have to remember, commodities work very differently than stocks, right? Commodities have to trade with the intention of somebody taking possession of it. So
Which is
when
important right now because nobody's driving,
Exactly. So the
right?
problem here is that you have a supply glut because all these producers, the OPEC plus, are all still producing, although at production cuts, and that oil has to go somewhere. So after it gets refined, it goes somewhere. And if the tankers are full and they're having to put, there's oil tankers at sea right now that are floating around. If they can't put the oil somewhere, the price of oil has to go down. So when barrels of crude are expected to transact in some capacity, somebody has to take it, right? It's the same thing as
Yeah.
pork. It's the same thing as beef. It's the same thing as wheat. Any commodity has to eventually exchange hands. It's not like RBC stock or, I don't know, pick any company where you don't
Yeah.
have to
Tech
physically
stock or
give it to
whatever.
them. Yeah, any stock really. So that really impacted the market this week. We've seen a bit of a rebound, but if you think about it, that's an indicator as far as where things are going. The reason why this happened is because production is down, because airlines aren't flying as much, because people aren't
Yeah.
driving as much. These are maybe things that we want to look at to say what direction is the economy going in, because it gives us a bit of a forward-looking lens. So
I didn't even think about the airlines. I mean, forget cars going all over the place, just jet fuel and that sort of thing. That would kill it.
yeah, I mean, Boeing is now talking about, how many people are going to want to, or how many companies are going to buy new planes, because the
Mhm.
big push that they have is that these new planes are efficient.
Right.
So if you have low oil prices, you probably don't care as much about efficiency when you're buying multi-billion dollars worth of aircraft, right?
Right.
So that becomes, it's just these little things that eventually are going to trickle down into the economy. All this debt
Yeah.
being raised from corporations to stay afloat, right? How does a company raise $2 billion worth of cash and have everything else stay equal?
Well,
Probably doesn't happen.
and I think, listen, conspiracy theory time. I mean, is somebody now sitting up saying, okay, hold on a second. It's a virus. We seem to have kind of got it under control. And listen, the frontline healthcare workers, I know they are still going through hell. I'm wondering if someone's sitting up in, the government or whatever saying, okay, guys, it's a virus. We know the healthcare workers are under a lot of stress, but you know what? If you have like the flu, if you have this, go home and stay home for a couple of weeks, right? I'm wondering because we can't have our economy stopped for this long. We can,
Right.
but people are going to be losing a lot of money and things are going to go sideways fast. Again, conspiracy theory time because listen, I wouldn't want to be going through what those healthcare workers and other frontline workers are going through right now. It is not pleasant, or even worse. Thank God my kids are older. Can you imagine trying to teach your own kid all day long school? I wouldn't. I know what I was
No.
like when I was a kid.
Hard
Hell
pass.
no. That's exactly. So those parents might end up in hospital soon, or the kids. We'll see.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, all right. What else happened this week that was important? I mean, that oil thing's big. What else came through?
I mean, we did hear about more unemployment numbers. I think officially
Yeah.
we've eclipsed all the jobs that were created out of the Great Recession have now been wiped. I mean, I don't know if that's a headline more than anything or clickbait,
or everyone was expecting it.
Or yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know if you can necessarily say that the type of jobs that were created were then taken away, but from a volume standpoint, they've gone away. That gives us again some kind of information to say what is the health of the economy and what is the health of the consumer, because the consumer
Yeah.
drives a lot of the economy. We spend, we buy, we do things that we enjoy. So if people are not making money, or they're expecting the government to somehow step in and help them, then it puts an impact on GDP, which we talked about last week, and spending and now all that stuff. So again, it's hard to really know the impact of this health crisis because it's probably going to slowly become evident, right? I think there was an article yesterday
Yeah.
that tech companies are now easing up on hiring,
Oh,
right?
of
That's
course. Yeah.
probably something to be mindful of, because traditionally speaking, tech companies have been seen as growth. They've been seen as cash kings in some capacity, some of them at least. So that changes things a little bit, right?
Yeah.
How does that industry get impacted? I'm not saying that I know necessarily, but these are just things to be mindful of.
Yeah. And I think, listen, we're talking impact, we're talking about future stuff. And I mentioned it on a video around maybe an alternative to deferring your mortgage payment. And every bank right now has interest relief, payment deferral. I mean, you can pretty much shut down your payments for 6 months on everything you owe and then pick it up later. What we don't know, and what scares me a little bit, is what this is going to look like for, your average, two parents, two kids, a dog, a picket fence, and a couple of car payments. What's that's going to look like later on when that mortgage comes up for renewal or they have to restart their lives? I mean, there's going to be some impact there as well, right? So that scares
Absolutely.
me a little bit.
Yeah, that's
So
why we hear a lot about the duration and the severity of this, right? If we
yeah,
can get out of it in a relatively short period of time and at least restart the economy in some capacity, then there will be less of an impact, because the simple reality is we go back to consuming and producing. But
yeah.
if this ends up becoming a scenario where we have to do a second lockdown, or maybe in the fall, just theoretically, if these types of conversations trickle back in, or if we can't get a hold of it from a health crisis, and a vaccine takes 2 years instead of 1 year. These types of issues, the longer it goes, the more of an impact it will have, and the less likely of a rebound, both on the market side as well as both on the economic side and the day-to-day side, will end up transpiring. So
Well, and ideally, listen, we clearly didn't learn our lesson from SARS in 2000, the year I was married the
three,
first time. Yeah, the year I was married the first time, it was a bad year between SARS and that, and and so hopefully now we've learned our lesson on how to manage it. And if it happens, unfortunately, if it happens again, hopefully it's just automatic. Here's what we do: get her done, fix it in 2 or 3 weeks, and it's always a V shape. You know,
yeah.
or I don't know what the alternative is, but hopefully we can learn our lesson and move on, because humans are pretty cool. We'll figure it out, right? So
Yeah, we're pretty yeah, we're resilient, I'll give
most
us
of us,
that.
right, Sam? Most of
Yeah, yeah,
us.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, most.
All right. What's going to be exciting coming this week? Mortgage world, I'm hoping for like nothing. I'm hoping for uneventful. I know we're
Hmm.
probably going to have more clarity on how to work through applications and stuff like that. But anything big coming next week that we're expecting?
I don't know if there's anything necessarily imminent that I don't want to say that we are or aren't expecting. What I will say is a lot of where we stand right now is based on the news that keeps coming out and we digest on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah. So
If
true.
we get some kind of information on the health side, I mean, Gilead Sciences was talking about potentially having some kind of treatment with an existing medication, but then yesterday reports came out that it kind of flopped. We don't know necessarily. It's not as optimistic as we had once hoped it was going to be. And by once, I mean like last week. So if that kind of optimism comes back, or there's some kind of breakthrough, there's so much pent up desire and demand that the minute we get good news, things are going to skyrocket. I shouldn't say they will skyrocket. I would expect that things will go back to some form of normalcy very quickly.
Yeah.
But the longer this happens, the longer it takes time for us to get back there, the more likely we have a scenario of more pain before
Yeah.
gain.
Yeah. And I think there's more and more vaccine talk, but listen, that takes months to make sure it even works.
Probably
So
years.
yeah, I know University of Waterloo is doing a lot of work, which is totally cool for the local economy here. But yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not liking the odds of us getting out of this with just because we got a
Um,
vaccine.
Yeah, most pharmaceutical companies are now talking about at least having some kind of attempt. And it's funny because maybe for the first time in a long time, you could probably have two or three or four producers come out with a vaccine simultaneously, and there would be so much demand that they may not even be able to meet that demand in a short period of time, right?
One
Johnson and
problem to
Johnson.
another, man. Holy cow, eh?
Exactly. J&J is talking about having a potential vaccine. GSK and Sanofi are talking about. I mean, I think there's about 20 or so different companies trying. But again, usually vaccines take many, many, many years, like 3 to 5 years before you do all the clinical trials. You make sure everything's going to be okay. Right now, it'll probably be a shortened period of time because of the severity and the urgency. So maybe we get lucky with 9, 12, 15, 18 months.
Mm.
But that's the optimistic view at this point. So
No,
treatment and testing is probably more short-term relevant.
it would be insane if they figured out, oh crap, a spoonful of Buckley's will work.
Imagine
That would
if,
be
oh my,
amazing.
I don't know. Have you seen the testing? It's
No.
extremely invasive. I
Is it
pray
really?
that I never have to do so. I don't know if you, but you know, when you go to the doctor, you get a strep throat exam and they do the
Yeah,
whole swab and they put the Q-tip thing in the back of your throat. I gag when I do that. Like I struggle
sure.
with that. The test, Google it after we're done this. The test for COVID goes up your nose into some cavity back there and it sits there for a couple seconds. I don't physically think I can do it.
Oh,
I don't physically think I can do
gross.
it. So hopefully they come out with some kind of new test that is much, much less invasive and faster. That's the other piece, the time that
People
it
won't
takes
go for
from it.
that test. It's kind of like when you're not in great health and
Yeah.
you avoid the doctor because you don't want to go through it, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be like, no, I'll hang around 2 weeks at home and just see what happens.
Yeah.
Not the right
It's
answer, but
wild. Yeah. So Google it after. You'll be terrified.
all right. Yeah, well, maybe I'll do it. Maybe we'll see. All right, listen, Sam, thanks for everything, bud. Have an awesome weekend and an awesome week. And it sounds like next week we'll be dealing with more as it happens type news because I think that's just the world we're in right now. So, all
You got it.
right,
Talk to you
have a
next
good one,
week.
buddy. Everybody, we'll talk to you next week. Look for Friday afternoon for the Mortgage and Markets podcast to come out. Talk to you soon.